the unseen smile. I awoke to the unsettling silence of my apartment, the kind that presses in on your eardrums and makes you acutely aware of your own heartbeat. Rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I shuffled to the bathroom, the chill of the floor tiles creeping up my bare feet. The mirror awaited, a gateway to another day, or so I thought. As I looked up, my reflection did too, but with a grin that didn't belong to me. It was wide, too wide, with rows of sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. I stumbled back, a scream caught in my throat. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia. My reflection seemed normal, but the image of that grin haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even alone. I started to see it everywhere, in the windows of shops, the side mirrors of cars, and in the eyes of strangers. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, but what if they only showed a reflection of something darker? I decided to seek answers. The local library held a collection of occult books, and within those dusty pages, I found mention of a creature known as the Smiling Man, a being that existed in mirrors, feeding off the fear it saw reflected back at it. The more I read, the more I felt its eyes on me, its grin widening with every page I turned. That night, the air felt thick with anticipation. I approached the mirror slowly, my heart pounding against my ribs. "What do you want?" I whispered, but the reflection only mimicked me. Then, in a moment of reckless courage, I smiled. The reflection's grin stretched impossibly, and it spoke without moving its lips. "I've been waiting for you." The voice was like the hiss of leaves in a dead forest. It told me of a world beyond the glass, a world where it reigned supreme, and I was an invited guest. The offer was simple: join it, and never fear anything again. Refuse, and be haunted by grins in every reflective surface for eternity. As I pondered the choice, a shadow moved behind the reflection. Something was there, in my house, just out of sight. I spun around, but nothing was amiss. When I looked back, the reflection was gone, leaving only my scared face staring back. The days blurred into a nightmare. I avoided mirrors, but their presence loomed like a shadow over my sanity. The Smiling Man's offer haunted me, freedom from fear, but at what cost? I needed answers, and desperation drove me to seek out the Mirror Sage, an old woman rumored to understand the secrets of reflective dimensions. Her cottage stood at the edge of the forest, its windows covered in silvered glass. The air smelled of damp earth and decay as I knocked on her door. She opened it, her eyes milky white, yet they seemed to pierce my soul. "You seek the truth," she rasped, her voice like rusted hinges. "The reflection is a gateway, a bridge between worlds." I listened, my heart pounding. She spoke of the veil, a thin boundary separating our reality from the Smiling Man's domain. "You must cross it," she said, handing me a tarnished hand mirror. "Find the truth, but beware, it will change you." I gazed into the mirror, and the glass rippled like water. My reflection grinned, but this time, it whispered, "Come." I stepped through, and the world shifted. The forest was darker, the moon a sickly yellow. Shadows danced, and the trees whispered secrets. The Smiling Man awaited, his grin wider than ever. He led me deeper, past gnarled roots and forgotten memories. We reached a clearing where mirrors hung from twisted branches. Each reflected a different version of reality, a carnival, a graveyard, a deserted city. The Smiling Man gestured to one, a mirror showing my apartment. "Your world," he said. "But it's crumbling." "Why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because you're here," he replied. "Your fear sustains me." I glimpsed my reflection in the mirror. It grinned, but this time, it was my own face. "What do you want?" I demanded. "To merge our worlds," it said. "To become whole." I stumbled back, realizing the truth. The Smiling Man was my reflection, a fractured part of my soul. He hungered for my fear, my pain. And now, I had a choice, to return and live in terror or stay and become like him. As I hesitated, the Mirror Sage appeared. "You're the key," she said. "Your fear can seal the veil forever." "But what happens to me?" I asked. "You'll be free," she whispered. No more reflections, no more grins. The smiling man lunged, teeth snapping. I closed my eyes, my fear a weapon. When I opened them, the mirror shattered, and reality fractured. I woke in my bed, the mirror empty. But the grin lingered, etched into my mind. The apartment was different now. Shadows clung to the walls, and the air tasted metallic. The smiling man's grin had seeped into my reality, infecting every corner. I avoided mirrors, but their absence gnawed at me. The reflection was gone, but its echo lingered, a phantom itch in my mind. I researched ancient rituals, desperate for a way out. The mirror sage had vanished, leaving only cryptic notes. To sever the bond, she'd written, "You must confront your deepest fear." But what was my fear? The smiling man? Or something deeper? One night, I stood before the bathroom mirror, my breath fogging the glass. The reflection was back, grinning wider than ever. "You're mine," it whispered. "Forever." I clenched my fists. "No more," I vowed. "I'll face you." The mirror rippled, and I stepped through. The other side was a nightmare, a twisted carnival of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of me. Some were broken, fractured souls like mine. Others grinned, their teeth sharp as knives. The smiling man awaited, his grin splitting his face. "Welcome," he said. "Ready to merge?" I shook my head. "I won't be your puppet." He lunged, but I held up the tarnished hand mirror, the one the mirror sage had given me. The reflection screamed, its grin warping into a scream of agony. The veil trembled, reality tearing at the seams. "Your fear," the mirror sage's voice echoed. "Use it." I focused on my deepest terror, the smiling man's grin. It was my own fear, my own darkness. I hurled it at him, and the veil shattered. The mirrors exploded, shards of glass slicing through dimensions. I woke in my bed, the room silent. The mirror was whole, my reflection normal. But the grin remained, etched into my soul. The smiling man was gone, but I felt his presence, lurking in the corners of my mind. And so, I live with the aftermath, the whispers, the shadows, the knowledge that somewhere, the smiling man grins. I've become a guardian, watching for cracks in reality, ready to face my fear once more. As I write this, the mirror calls to me. Its surface ripples, and I see glimpses of other worlds. The smiling man waits, patient and hungry. But I won't let him in. I'll guard the veil, my fear a weapon, my reflection a reminder. And if you ever see a grin in the mirror, remember my story. Fear it, fight it, and know that somewhere, I'm watching, too. Story 2. The Unfamiliar. I had always loved the quietude of our little town, where the most exciting event was the annual fall fair. But that tranquility was shattered the day I received the call. My husband's voice, usually so warm and familiar, sounded distant and cold as he said he'd be home soon. I remember feeling a chill run down my spine, but I shrugged it off as fatigue. The house was silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock and the occasional creak of the floorboards as I moved about, preparing dinner. It was then, in the midst of chopping vegetables, that I felt a presence behind me. I turned, expecting to see my husband, but instead, I found him standing in the doorway, his figure obscured by the dimming light, covered in blood. His eyes, once a vibrant blue, were now dull and lifeless. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there, staring at me with an intensity that made my heart race. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. It was as if he was looking through me, to something unseen and terrifying beyond. I approached him slowly, reaching out a trembling hand, but as I touched his arm, I recoiled. His skin was icy, unlike the warm touch I was accustomed to. Panic set in, and I stumbled backward, my mind racing with questions. Was this even my husband? If not, who, or what, was standing before me? The silence was suddenly broken by the phone ringing, slicing through the tension like a knife. I hesitated, then answered. It was my husband's voice again, warm and concerned, asking if I was all right. Confusion clouded my thoughts. How could he be on the phone when he was right in front of me? As I turned back to the doorway, the figure was gone. The blood, the chilling gaze, the icy touch, all vanished as if they were never there. I was alone, the eerie silence of the house enveloping me once more. But the sense of dread lingered, a foreboding whisper in the dark that refused to be silenced. The days that followed blurred into a nightmare. I questioned my sanity, replaying that moment over and over, the blood, the coldness, the impossible duality of my husband's presence. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw his lifeless gaze, and the walls of our home seemed to whisper secrets I couldn't comprehend. My husband, or whatever had taken his form, moved through the house like a phantom. He'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched meals I prepared, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the wood. His voice, when he spoke, was hollow, devoid of emotion. He'd ask mundane questions, about work, the weather, but his eyes held something ancient, something beyond human understanding. I tried to confide in my best friend, Sarah, hoping she'd dismiss my fears as stress-induced hallucinations. But when I described the blood, she paled, her eyes widening. "I've seen it too," she whispered. "In my dreams." Sarah recounted a recurring nightmare, a dark figure standing at the foot of her bed, its face obscured. It would whisper in a language she couldn't recognize, and the room would fill with the metallic scent of blood. "It's like a warning," she said. "A warning about something coming." We researched local legends, desperate for answers. The town's history was rife with tales of lost souls, vengeful spirits, and forbidden rituals. One story stood out, the tale of the Whispering Man, a malevolent entity that preyed on those who heard its voice. It was said that once you heard the whispers, you were marked for death. As the nights grew colder, I barricaded myself in our bedroom, clutching the phone. My husband's voice would call from downstairs, urging me to come to him. But I knew better. The real him was still out there, somewhere, trapped or worse. The imposter mimicked his voice, luring me into its web. One evening, as the moon hung low in the sky, I ventured downstairs. The house seemed to breathe, its walls pulsating with unseen energy. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of anguish and rage. I followed them to the basement door, my heart pounding. The basement was a place I rarely visited, a dark, damp space filled with forgotten relics. The whispers led me to an old mirror, its glass warped and cracked. As I stared into it, my reflection shifted. My eyes glowed crimson, and my skin rippled like water. The whispers coalesced into words, "He is not your husband." I shattered the mirror, screaming. The shards cut my hands, and blood dripped onto the floor. And then, from the darkness, emerged the true horror, the Whispering Man himself. His form was indistinct, a shifting silhouette, but his eyes burned with malevolence. "You've heard my voice," he rasped. "Now you belong to me." The Whispering Man loomed before me, his form shifting like smoke. His eyes bore into mine, and I felt a pull, an irresistible force that drew me closer. The whispers intensified, a chorus of lost souls pleading for release. "Why?" I managed to choke out. "Why my husband?" The Whispering Man tilted his head, and his voice echoed through my mind. "Your husband," he said, "was merely a vessel. A convenient disguise. I needed someone close to you, someone you trust." "But why?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" He stepped closer, and I could smell decay, like rotting leaves after a storm. "I feed on fear," he whispered. "Your fear, your anguish, it sustains me. And in return, I grant you glimpses of truth. Secrets hidden in the shadows." I thought of my husband, the real one, out there somewhere, trapped in this nightmare. "Release him," I demanded. "Take me instead." The Whispering Man laughed, a sound that scraped against my sanity. "You don't understand," he said. "He's already gone. The blood you saw, the remnants of his essence. I am what remains." Desperation clawed at my chest. "What do you want from me?" "Your voice," he said. "Your screams, your terror. They resonate across dimensions. They draw others like me. And when they arrive, they'll feast upon this world. I glanced at the shattered mirror, the shards still stained with my blood. "How do I stop you?" "You can't," he replied. "But you can choose. Embrace the darkness, become my harbinger. Or resist, and watch as your reality unravels." I thought of Sarah, her haunted eyes, and the shared nightmares. "What about her?" The whispering man grinned. "She's already chosen. She'll be my herald." My mind raced. The town, the fair, the unsuspecting people, all in danger. I had to act. "I won't be your pawn," I said. "I'll find a way to break this curse." He leaned in, his breath cold against my cheek. "Remember," he whispered, "the blood binds us. You'll hear my voice, feel my presence. And when the time comes, you'll make the ultimate sacrifice." And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the basement, the whispers fading. I stumbled back upstairs, my resolve hardening. I would save my husband, my friend, my town. But as I reached for the phone, I hesitated. The voice on the other end, the real one, was no longer familiar. It was a hollow echo, a promise of horrors to come. And so, I made my choice. The whispering man had his pact, and I had mine. The blood would bind us, but perhaps, just perhaps, I could turn the tide. As I dialed Sarah's number, I wondered if she'd hear the fear in my voice, the truth hidden within. The line connected, and I whispered, "Sarah, we need to talk." And in the silence that followed, I knew the nightmare was far from over. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.